Good day, everyone. My name is Rebecca Lilly for the International Association for Energy Economics. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Mexico's Energy Prospects, Gains from Renewable Resources or Sources. We are grateful to Hector Nuñez for today's timely discussion. First, a little bit about the International Association for Energy Economics. We are the largest association specializing in the field of energy economics and provide a forum for the exchange of ideas, experience, and issues among professionals interested in the field. The organization produces 2 professional journals, a newsletter, and holds conferences and virtual presentations, along with a host of other products and services you can find at our website at iaee.org. If you're not already a member of the association, we welcome you to join. A few housekeeping matters in regard to today's webinar before I hand things over to our speaker. First, this webinar is being recorded for those that cannot participate in today's live event. If you have questions for our speaker, please click the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window and type your question. We've allocated time at the end of the webinar to read and answer them. And now I would like to introduce you to our speaker, Hector Nuñez. He is the Associate Professor in the Department of Economics at the Center for Research and Teaching Economics in Mexico. Hector, over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, everyone. I will share my screen with you. Okay. Thanks again for being here. My presentation is Mexico's Energy Prospects, Gains from Renewable Source over a Fossil Fuel-Dominated Environment. This is a work co-authored by Pedro Hansevich and Juan Rosellón and me. We also get some support from Iniciativa Climática de Mexico and Agora. Just to provide a little bit of the context of what we are looking in this study, we are looking to measure the effect of an accelerated decarbonization process in the Mexican economy will have on various economic variables vis-a-vis a baseline scenario that follow the energy policy agenda of the current administration. The current administration, known as the Fourth Transformation or 4C, has an agenda where fossil fuels have dominated over alternative sources like renewable energy, mainly, and government-owned firms, energy firms, have been particularly favored. So the focus of this work is on the electricity sector, emphasizing the impacts on economic outcomes, social welfare, and the environment. The analysis is carried out in certain detail with an economic rather than a climate change emphasis. We develop an endogenous price partial equilibrium model that seeks to analyze and forecast the dynamics of the energy sector. In doing so, the model includes several renewable and fossil fuel sector, as well as various electricity generation technologies. And it also includes the transmission network and considers fuel imports. Results of the optimization models are then used to perform complementary calculations to assess the potential change that likely will occur in the domestic accounts, specifically in the production, in the GDP, and in the employment. A little more of the background of Mexico and what is the motivation of this paper. It's important to say that Mexico's primary energy production is largely dominated by the fossil fuel industry, which account for 87% of the total in 2018 and 2019. And the situation has changed a little more in the recent years to the renewables, but not that much. So we are talking about this 87%. That's why we are talking about a fossil fuel dominated environment. We can see in the table that renewables are only about 10% of the total energy matrix in Mexico. Another important element of the context is the energy trade in Mexico, the fuel trade. So we can see that Mexico is a net export of crude oil, but most of the rest of the energy is imported. It's important to see the natural gas, the NG, which is mostly imported from the US. So so this is the electricity sector in Mexico. Use mostly import natural gas from the US. It's highly dependent on the imports of the US. This is for 2018. But again, this is still happening, so it's not there is not a huge change in this picture from 2018 to 2021. The fourth transformation aims to strengthen the state-owned oil company and electricity companies. This is Pemex and CFE, the Comisión Federal de Electricidad, regardless of their impact on public finance, energy efficiency, and environment. The idea of rescuing the Pemex and CFE is to some extent intervened. For example, the fuel oil surplus from Pemex are now being used most by some oil plants owned by the CFE. So they are not using less natural gas and most fuel oil. And we know that the impacts of using fuel oil is the environmental impacts are very high, and also I mean they has also a high cost for the electricity generation. Renewable energies in Mexico have entered in a phase of small progress, in which the government has helped by trying to get rid of the long-term auction system, which had incorporated renewable generation, mainly wind and solar, at a very competitive price. We can say that were among the lowest in the world. The government also has tried to block the connection to the transmission network of those projects that had won the auction, but were still in the preliminary phase, based on the argument of preserving the reliability of the system. Also has tried to flood the market with clean energy certificates awarded to all the state-owned renewable plants. So what it's doing is that the value of these certificates is getting really low. And also what it's doing is to eliminate order in the electricity dispatch, favoring the more expensive plan of the national utility, the Comisión, at the expense of private plants that are more efficient. So the motivation of this work basically is the Mexico dependence on import fuels should be an incentive for a rapid decarbonization of the countries, regardless of its political alignment. So this is because the significant volatility in oil and gas prices worldwide, Mexico can avoid this by the electrification of the country. And most analysis predict that this trend of the high volatility of the oil and gas price will continue in the coming years. So diversification includes a greater share of renewable source, therefore plays a huge role in the energy security for Mexico. So the task of a rapid decarbonization makes sense, makes sense in Mexico, given the potential that the country has for the development of the solar resource that is considered one of the largest in the world. And the country also has a high potential for wind and hydro. So it makes sense to transit to this decarbonization. So the research goals that we have in this study is: will it possible for Mexico to accommodate the development of renewable generation in the following years? as well as to meet the goals set in the Paris Agreement, which is the one that Mexico is valid. It's still in Mexico. Recently, Mexico announced in Egypt that a new goal, but it's not official yet. So, but in Paris, the goal was to have 25% of the renewable, to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 25%, and now in the Paris, in the Egypt meeting, Mexico announced to increase this goal to 35%. So our question is if the renewable source are only complementary to fossil fuels generation, or they are really a substitute of the fossil fuels based generation. Okay, so this is a representation of the model that we developed for this work. So in summary, this is a bunch of supply, demand, cost curves that optimize and find a new equilibrium for the electricity and the fuel markets. So what we have here in the picture, in the left side, is the supply. So we have all the fuel supply in red, including the imports mainly from the US. So the supply goes to the generation of electricity, to the generation of heat for the industry, and diesel and gasoline supply go to the fuel supply for transportation. And on the top, we have the renewable electricity supply, which goes mainly for the electricity supply. On the right-hand side, we have the demand side. So we have the main sector, the main electricity sector. This is the industrial electric demand, the commerce and service electric demand, the transportation electric demand, the household electric demand. Also, we have the fuel demand for heat for the industry and the fuel demand for transportation. So all these supply and demand come together in our framework. They are the Mexican fuel and electric market. Then we run the optimization model, and we get the several variables like production, consumption, prices, and trade for all these sectors, and we can calculate the welfare and greenhouse gas emissions impacts of the scenario that we are simulating. In technical terms, this is a mathematical programming economic equilibrium model for the fuel and electricity sector in Mexico. The model employs the social surplus maximization approach. The objective function of the model is subject to resource limitation and market balance constraint, and some of the sectors are disaggregated at the state level. One important part here is to say that this is a partial equilibrium model that gives priority to a more accurate modeling of the energy sector, which is very important here for the purpose of that we have, and also has this advantage that we can go in more detail to several things than a general equilibrium model. But then if we want to see the effects on the aggregates of the country, we adapt the energy elasticity approach to perform these complementary calculations, which allow us to assess the potential change that likely will occur in the production and employment under the two competing scenarios that I will show you in the next slide. So for this part, for the for these effects, we use the energy and labor elasticity of output for each economic sector, as well as the share of labor and capital according to the input-output matrix from INEGI, which is the statistic institute from Mexico. Okay, so we have basically two scenarios. The baseline scenario, which is based on the energy policy of the current administration, the 4T, in which priority is given to the electricity generation from fossil fuels by the government-owned electricity company, the Comisión Federal de Electricidad. For the projections, we calculate different rates of growth for fuel supply, electricity generation capacity, technological progress ratio, and demand. For the demand, especially, we follow the projection of the energy ministry from the government, and the GDP and the population growth rates. The alternative scenario we call the green scenario, assumes that renewable energy grow at higher rates according to the projection made by the Iniciativa Climática de Mexico, and priority is given to market competition and renewable energies. In both scenarios, it's assumed that the electricity is dispatched by merit order. This is just one element to make both scenarios comparable, so we can have some the results make more sense when we compare them. So we project the market conditions for 2018, which is our base year, only for validation purpose. We get a really good results for the validation. So the deviation less than 10% for each variable. And then we project for 2035 and 2050, for which Mexico has committed to meet several clean energy and environmental goals. The assumptions that we have in the model, the partial equilibrium model is intended to analyze the long-run effects and does not incorporate the intraday issues that may happen due to, for example, congestion in the specific transmission line. So this is we won't have a transmission restriction in the model, because at aggregate level there is not this kind of problem, but anyway, we have the cost of transmission in the model. They'll use annual data with some variables at the state level and other at the national level. This is mainly because some data limitation. We don't have every single variable at state level. We only found some variables at national level. And here, for example, what I was saying, transmission capacity constraints will never be valid, but transmission costs are included. Following the projection made by the Iniciativa Climática de México, the model assumes renewable energy costs in the green scenario decrease at higher rates than in the 4T scenario. We believe this assumption makes sense and is well documented, since renewable energy industry significantly reduced processing costs in the medium and long term due to the market competitiveness, technological change, learning by doing, economies of scale, reduction of input prices, spillovers from other activities, among other factors. So this assumption is supported in the expected high growth of the renewable energy capacity, and is very key for our results. So we will see how renewables really increase way more than under 4T scenario, when there is not this incentive for the renewable energy. So these are some of the information we have for the model. Recall this: we have, for instance, this information we have at the state level. So these are only average. So we use these different technologies for electricity productions. So these are the levelized cost and how costs reduced in a annual based. So we can see how solar and wind reduce. And also the capacity, we have different capacities. And in the right-hand side, we have some of the input prices. So most of this information is at state level. So we have, and of course, I'm not showing here all the information we're using in the model, since we have a lot of demand and supply curves in the model that include many parameters that I'm not showing here. So I would like now to go to the results, but I will be happy to answer or to share any piece of information about the data or the model that if you have any questions. This is the results for the electricity generations. So we can see in the graph in the left-hand side how are the projections for 2035 and 2050 for both scenarios in terms of conventional and renewable generation. So we can see how in 2035 most of the electricity in the green scenario will be renewable, almost twice than the conventional electricity. And by 2050, it will be almost 4 times the amount of electricity from renewable sources than the amount of electricity from conventional sources. So we have kind of a different, like a opposite results in the 40 in the current status quo scenario. So, and also what you can notice is that we will have a much higher product generation in the green scenario. And this is due to the same development of the industry, which we mainly in the industry, which find that the electricity is cheaper and can produce more. So it's like an endogenous process that is happening. So this is why we can have more electricity by 2050 under the green scenario than the 40 scenario. So where most of the electricity will come from? So in the graph, in the figure in the right-hand side, we see that under green scenario, most of the renewable electricity will come from wind and solar. And in the 40 scenario, most of the electricity will come from the combined cycle technology, mainly from natural gas. And also the part that of the conventional electricity in the green scenario will come from from the combined cycle from the natural gas. From the demand side, so we have that most of the electricity demand will be demanded mostly from the industry sector. So we can see now by 2035 how the green scenario is showing that the industry will demand more electricity than under the 40 scenario. We also can see how the last bar is the electric vehicles. So the electric transportation will be important under the green scenario, and we will be very small under the 40 scenario. And by 2050, the industry will demand significantly more electricity than under the 40, as explained before. And also we will have an important participation again from the electric transportation. And also the residential consumption will be higher. In terms of surplus, economic surplus, we can see that the main winners by 2035 will be the consumers of electricity under the green scenario, because they will have they will buy electricity at a cheaper price, but also the consumer transportation will have some gains. We can see that there is not gains in the 4T scenario from electricity transportation. And in the long run, in 2050, again, the consumer electricity will have a significantly higher surplus. Also the consumer transportation and the producer of electricity. They will be they will have a huge increase in the welfare gains in this part, because they will see the results of investment in the renewable sector that they in the long run. In terms of emissions, under the green scenario, we see that emissions will be significantly lower than under the 4T scenario in both years, in 2035 and 2050. So as a result, the total welfare, that includes the total greenhouse gas emissions and the economic surplus, we see that in 2035 we will not have a significant difference between 4T and the green scenario, but the huge difference will be in 2050, when in the long run, when the gains in the welfare gains in the green scenario will be almost twice than the 4T scenario. Okay, so these are some of the, just for the second part of the work, some of the values that and parameters that you use for to calculate the impact of the results, mainly the results of changing in this generation and in this demand in the GDP and in employment. So the results that we are showing is that under by 2035, the GDP will be 28 percentile points larger than in the green scenario than in the 4T scenario. So when we take this growth to an annual to every year, we have a 1 percentile point difference. So one percentile point, the green scenario, the GDP under the green scenario will be higher than in the 4T scenario. And by 2015 will be 1.2 percentile points in a base year. So we will have actually significantly higher GDP growth in this when we adapt a green scenario. And in the employment is almost also similar. By 2035, we will have 1 percentile point larger growth under the green scenario than under 4T scenario, and by 2050, 1.15 percentile point more higher growth under the green scenario than the 4T scenario. So we can see that the importance of to develop the green scenario in Mexico, and we also see that it's possible. So just to conclude, the current administration took power in December 2018, and since then has targeted higher revenues from the national power company and to take back under control the electricity market. At the same time, existing investment in renewable energy has suffered several setbacks through provision that the Energy Ministry has been promoted with relative success. What is clear is that the current policy will not favor the development of a green energy in Mexico. However, renewable energy sources are still making important progress as a very competitive energy source, and most players and analysts expect this trend to continue in the short and long run. The main results indicate that maintaining the status quo policy prioritizing the electricity generation by the government-owned company will temporarily enhance revenue, but renewables will make a small progress. On the contrary, in a green development scenario, as we show in this work, economic growth and employment levels are substantially higher, and greenhouse gas emissions are significantly reduced. In sum, the green scenario guarantees higher social welfare levels. So that's the main conclusion of our work. So it is possible to have a green scenario if we start now, and if we continue what we have as we were 4 years ago, and we can still get the goals that we and the result that we are showing here in the green scenario. Otherwise, if we continue with this status quo policy, we are missing a lot of opportunities in Mexico to have a better environment and more efficient electricity market and higher GDP and higher employment. So thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy to answer any questions.
You do have one person who has their hand raised. Would you like me to allow them to speak?
Yes.
Okay. Parvez Khan, and you also have a question waiting.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. What is the impact on balance of trade? It seems like there should be great economic benefit from Mexico to replace high-value oil with renewable and pipeline gas from the US, even with the need to import capital equipment in natural gas pipelines and renewable electricity equipment. Yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, Mexico is doing and private companies are doing a high investment in pipelines in Mexico to bring the natural gas from the south of the US. So I will say we don't have this cost in the model, the cost of not using or use less than the capacity of pipelines. But still we have some part, about 20% of the electricity will come from fossil fuels. So we see that this capacity of the pipelines can be used by this 20% of the electricity, and also part of the industry also can also use part of the natural gas. So in that terms, we will see that the balance of the natural gas is fine. So we are not saying it's 100% renewable. it's 80% renewable. So the 20% can use this. What will happen with the oil? That's a great question, because we see now we have high oil prices, but we don't know in the future if these prices will be also that high as now. So at the beginning of the administration, the price was not that high. So everyone was saying it's a bad idea to develop the new refinery. So now we see that because of the price, it may work, but maybe in the future the price will not be that high, and then we will have a huge loss. So if we rely on a renewable scenario, we will not have this uncertainty. So I don't know if this can help to answer the question.
We do have somebody with their hand up, but I asked them to unmute and they have not. So
Okay. The slides. I don't know, Rebecca.
I would be happy to make them available. If you could email them to me after the close here, I will get them online on the IAEE website.
All right. Yep.
All right. Do you have any closing comments?
No, thank you very much for your attention, and this will be available online. So anytime you can contact me or any of my co-authors. We will be happy to answer any question or to share any file that you want to see. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay. Well, we would like to thank Hector Nuñez and your co-authors for an outstanding webinar. This webinar will be available on IAEE's website for future download. If you're not a member of IAEE, we encourage you to join by visiting iaee.org. We thank you for attending, and I officially close this webinar.